You're watching the Stories That Scare channel. There is no turning back now.
Who's that Pokémon?
3 true Pokémon card trading horror stories that will make you think twice about meeting collectors. What's going on, everyone, and welcome back. Tonight, we're diving into 3 true horror stories about something that seems completely harmless. Meeting someone in person to trade Pokémon cards. For many collectors, trading is one of the best parts of the hobby. Whether you're looking for that final holographic card to finish a set, hunting for a rare first edition, or simply hoping to make a fair trade, collectors often meet through Facebook Marketplace, Discord servers, Reddit, local card shops, trading nights, conventions, or regional Pokémon tournaments. Most trades go exactly as planned. You meet, compare binders, shake hands, and leave with a few new cards. But occasionally, someone shows up who wasn't there to trade. Whether these stories are true, I'll let y'all decide. Story 1. The Binder. Back in 2022, I had recently gotten back into collecting Pokémon cards after finding my old childhood binder in my parents' attic. Within a few months, I'd rebuilt a pretty decent collection. One evening, I posted online that I was looking for a Shadowless Charizard. I knew it was a long shot. The next morning, someone messaged me. His profile picture showed an older man standing beside a display case full of vintage Pokémon products. He said he had one. Mint condition. His asking price was surprisingly reasonable. Almost too reasonable. When I asked why he wasn't selling it through an auction site, he replied, "I'd rather meet another collector." That sounded fair. We agreed to meet the following Saturday. Not at a card shop, not at a convention, but at an old shopping center about 40 minutes outside town. He claimed the nearby card store had closed years earlier, but collectors still use the parking lot as an informal trading spot. When I arrived, there wasn't another person in sight, just empty storefronts, broken windows, and weeds growing through the pavement. I almost left. Then an old sedan slowly pulled into the lot. The driver stepped out carrying a large black binder. He smiled. "You made it." He seemed friendly enough. Older, maybe in his 60s, he carefully placed the binder on the hood of his car. Every page was filled with vintage Pokémon cards. First editions, Shadowless holos, Japanese promos, cards worth thousands of dollars, more than I'd ever seen in one place. I asked him where he'd gotten them. He smiled without looking up. They all belonged to my grandson. Then he turned the page. Every card sleeve after that was empty. He quietly said, "He doesn't need them anymore." I looked up. His smile had disappeared. Then I noticed someone else was standing inside one of the abandoned storefronts, watching us, perfectly still. I hadn't seen them arrive. Neither had the old man. At least, I don't think he had. I kept glancing toward the storefront. The figure hadn't moved, didn't wave, didn't check a phone, just stood there. I asked the man if he knew who it was. He slowly looked over his shoulder. For the first time, his expression changed. "What are you talking about?" "The person in the window," he frowned. "There isn't anyone there." I looked back. The figure was gone. I figured maybe I'd imagined it. The lighting inside the abandoned building was strange. Reflections, shadows, my mind trying to make sense of an empty room. The old man slid a card across the binder. There, a pristine Shadowless Charizard. It looked perfect, almost too perfect. As I reached for it, he quietly asked, "Would you mind waiting a few minutes? My grandson should be here soon." I froze. "I thought you said—" He interrupted me. "He always comes when I bring the binder." His eyes shifted toward the empty storefront. So we wait. Neither of us spoke. The parking lot was completely silent. No passing cars, no birds, nothing. Then I heard footsteps, crunch, 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 coming from inside the abandoned shopping center. Slow, steady, getting closer. I expected someone to walk around the corner. Nobody did. The footsteps continued anyway. They stopped, just behind me. I spun around. Nothing. When I turned back, the old man was staring over my shoulder. His face had gone completely pale. In a trembling voice, he whispered, "Don't look at him." Every hair on my body stood up. I didn't ask questions. I didn't turn around again. I simply closed the binder, handed it back, and walked toward my car. The footsteps followed. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Always the same distance behind me. I reached my driver's door, unlocked it, jumped inside, locked it again. As I started the engine, I looked into my rearview mirror. The old man was still standing beside his car. But now, he wasn't alone. A teenage boy stood beside him, wearing an oversized Pokémon hoodie, holding a trading binder against his chest. He slowly lifted one hand and waved. The old man never acknowledged him. He simply climbed into his sedan and drove away. I never saw the boy move. Curious, I searched local news archives later that night. I eventually found an article from nearly 15 years earlier. A grandfather and his grandson had been on their way to a regional Pokémon trading event. A distracted driver crossed the center line. Neither survived. The accompanying photograph showed them standing together, holding the exact same black trading binder. To this day, if someone insists on meeting at an abandoned location, I don't care what card they're offering. I'm not going. Sometimes the rarest cards come with the highest price. All right, let's move on to story number 2. This next story comes from someone who agreed to meet another collector after finding an unbelievable deal on a complete base set collection. The seller promised, "If you're the first one here, they're yours." The listing almost looked fake. Complete base set, every holographic card, including Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur. The asking price? Less than half of what it should have been. The seller claimed he needed the money quickly because he was moving out of state. His profile had dozens of positive reviews, real photos, real comments, everything checked out. I messaged him immediately. Within minutes he replied, "You're the first person to message me. Meet me tonight and they're yours." The address wasn't a card shop. It wasn't a convention center either. It was a community center on the edge of town. The parking lot was packed. Hundreds of cars. People carrying binders. Kids wearing Pokémon shirts. It looked like I'd stumbled onto a huge trading event. Inside, rows of folding tables stretched across the gymnasium. Collectors everywhere, some grading cards, others negotiating trades. Parents watched from the bleachers, while kids excitedly compared their newest pulls. It felt normal, almost comforting. I eventually found the seller. He looked exactly like his profile picture. Late 20s, ball cap, large black backpack. He smiled. "You made it." He unzipped the backpack. Inside was a beautifully organized binder. Every page was loaded. Every card looked authentic, even under my flashlight. We agreed on a price. As I reached for my wallet, he suddenly paused. "You mind helping me carry one more box?" "It's out of my truck." That should have been my first warning. His truck wasn't parked near the entrance. It sat alone, way in the back corner of the lot, far away from everyone else. As we walked, the sounds from the convention slowly faded. The laughter, the conversations, even the loudspeaker, everything became strangely quiet. When we reached his truck, he unlocked the tailgate. There wasn't another box. There wasn't anything back there, just an old red Pokémon binder. Much older than the one he'd shown me inside. He slowly picked it up. "This was my first collection." He smiled. "I haven't opened it since the accident." I didn't know what to say. He carefully unzipped the binder. Every plastic sleeve was empty. He flipped another page. Empty. Another. Empty. Dozens of empty pages. Then, one lone card remained, a Pikachu, bent, water damaged. Across the bottom, written in faded black marker, were the words, "Property of Ethan." The seller quietly asked, "Do you think he'd still recognize it?" Before I could answer, a child's voice spoke from somewhere behind us. "Dad?" We both turned. Standing beneath one of the parking lot lights was a little boy, maybe 8 years old, holding a Pokeball backpack. The seller whispered, "There you are." He took one step toward the child. The parking lot lights flickered. I instinctively looked away, only for a second. When I looked back, the boy was gone. So was the seller. Only the old red binder remained. Lying in the parking space, I picked it up, completely empty, except for the damaged Pikachu. The next morning, I searched the seller's username online. An old memorial post appeared. 5 years earlier, A father and his son had been driving home from a regional Pokémon card tournament. A drunk driver crossed the median. Neither survived. The attached photo showed the little boy, holding the same worn red binder, and tucked into the front pocket was a bent Pikachu card with his name written across the bottom. Sometimes, collectors aren't searching for rare cards. They're searching for one last trade. We've got one final story, and it's about a collector who agreed to meet someone at a Pokémon convention, only to discover his trading partner was never on the attendee list. This final story was shared by someone who attended one of the largest Pokémon card conventions in the Midwest. If you've never been to one, imagine hundreds of vendors, thousands of collectors, rows and rows of display cases filled with cards worth more than some people's cars. It's loud, crowded, and honestly, one of the safest places to buy, sell, or trade Pokémon cards, which is exactly why what happened that day made no sense. I'd spent nearly 6 hours walking the convention floor, buying a few singles, trading with other collectors, getting cards signed. It was almost closing time when my phone buzzed. Someone had replied to a listing I'd posted earlier that morning. I was looking for one specific card, a Neo Genesis Lugia. The message simply read, "I have one. Meet me upstairs." The convention center had a second floor that overlooked the vendor hall, mostly conference rooms and quiet hallways. I figured another vendor was avoiding the crowd, so I headed upstairs. The hallway was empty, completely silent. At the far end, a man stood beside one of the windows, holding a black leather binder. He looked to be in his early 40s, clean-shaven, baseball cap, gray hoodie. Nothing unusual about him. "You looking for Lugia?" I nodded. He opened the binder. There it was, perfect centering, no whitening, no scratches. It might have been the nicest copy I'd ever seen. "How much?" He smiled. "I don't want money. I just want a trade." He pointed toward my backpack. "You still carry your childhood binder?" I laughed nervously. "How did you know that?" He shrugged. "Most of us do." That answer felt odd, but not enough to leave. I handed him my binder. He slowly flipped through every page, never stopping, never commenting, until he reached one particular card, a beat-up base set Gengar. Its corners were rounded from years of being handled. He gently touched the sleeve. "I remember when you traded for this." My stomach dropped. Nobody knew that story. I was 10 years old. The trade happened at a flea market over 20 years ago. I never posted about it. Never told anyone at the convention. I stared at him. "Have we met?" He smiled. "I've seen you here before. I've watched you grow up." Then, the convention PA system crackled overhead. "Attention vendors." For just a second, I looked toward the ceiling. When I looked back, the man was gone. His binder, gone. The hallway, empty. Thinking he'd ducked into one of the conference rooms, I checked every door, locked. Every single one. I hurried downstairs and found one of the convention organizers. I described the man, gray hoodie, black binder, Lugia. The organizer frowned, then quietly asked, "Was he standing upstairs by the west windows?" I nodded. His expression changed immediately. He sighed. "You're not the first person." Apparently, for nearly a decade, collectors had reported meeting the same man. Always near closing time, always offering impossible trades, always carrying the same black binder. Security reviewed the surveillance footage every single time. No one was ever recorded entering or leaving that hallway. The organizer eventually showed me an old newspaper clipping they kept in the office. Years earlier, long before the convention moved into that building, a local collector had suffered a fatal heart attack while organizing a charity trading event. The accompanying photo showed him smiling proudly, holding a black leather Pokémon binder, wearing a gray hoodie. As I turned to hand the newspaper back, something slipped from between its pages. A trade receipt, yellow with age, on the bottom, written in faded blue ink, were 6 words. "Thanks for the Gengar. See you next year." I still own that same Gengar. I've never traded it. And every year, just before the convention closes, I find myself looking toward the upstairs hallway, just in case someone is still waiting to make one last trade. Sometimes, the rarest thing you can collect is a story no one believes. If you enjoyed these stories, let me know which one creeped you out the most. And if you've ever attended a Pokémon card trade night, convention, or met another collector in person and experienced something you still can't explain, I'd love to read about it in the comments. Who knows? Your story might appear in a future episode. Until next time, keep the fires burning. And as always, I'll tell the stories. If you'll stay scared.